Nestled in a picturesque part of town, the Maplewood Estates community was known for its lush trees, manicured lawns, and friendly neighbors. The streets were lined with charming homes, each exuding unique character while adhering to the general aesthetic guidelines established by the Homeowners Association, HOA. From the moment I moved in, the serene environment felt like a breath of fresh air. The HOA, consisting of several elected members from within the community, was tasked with maintaining property values, enforcing rules, and fostering harmony among residents. At first glance, everything seemed to run smoothly under their watchful eye. Regular newsletters kept homeowners informed about community events and seasonal activities, a summer barbecue here, a winter holiday gathering there. However, as time passed, I began to notice a shift in their approach. What started as a helpful organization soon morphed into an entity more concerned with rigid rule enforcement than genuine community building. The turning point for me came one sunny afternoon when I decided to add a whimsical element to my front yard, a vibrant garden with an eclectic mix of flowers. My vision was to bring more color to our street and encourage others to embrace creativity in their outdoor spaces. Little did I know that this innocent act of self-expression would draw the ire of the HOA. Within days, I received a formal letter from them claiming my colorful garden violated community standards. As I read through their criticisms, disbelief washed over me. How could they tear down what brought joy not just to me but potentially to my neighbors as well? This incident marked the beginning of my journey into conflict with an authority that I had once thought existed solely for our benefit, a journey that would eventually lead me to consider an unexpected course of action, buying their entire HOA. One afternoon, as I finished planting the last few blooms in my garden, a sudden chill gripped my heart. I noticed an unfamiliar vehicle parked in front of my house, a clear sign that the HOA was taking notice. Moments later, a member of the HOA, Mr. Thompson, approached my front door with a stern look that instantly put me on edge. Clutching a clipboard, he wasted no time delivering a formal complaint about my garden. According to him, the vibrant colors and unconventional arrangement clashed with the neighborhood's aesthetics, which were supposed to reflect a uniform look dictated by the association's guidelines. As he spoke, I felt a mixture of disbelief and anger boiling within me. I had poured my heart into creating this garden, envisioning it as a source of joy not just for myself but for the entire community. To me, it was an embodiment of creativity and individuality, qualities I believed should be celebrated rather than stifled. Mr. Thompson continued to rattle off specifics from the HOA's regulations, emphasizing that flowers over a certain height or unconventional color schemes were not permitted. It felt like an attack on my personal expression. After our conversation, I returned inside and sank onto the couch, overwhelmed by an unexpected wave of frustration. How could an organization meant to protect our neighborhood now be acting as its gatekeeper? The experience left me feeling alienated in a place I had thought was welcoming. In that moment, it became clear that what I had considered an innocent act of beautification had transformed into a battle for my right to enjoy my property as I saw fit. This incident would serve not only as the catalyst for my growing discontent but also propel me toward considering drastic measures to reclaim control, not just over my yard but over the entire HOA. After the confrontation with Mr. Thompson, I felt a whirlwind of emotion swirling within me, frustration, disbelief, and even anger. How could a group tasked with fostering community spirit turn against me for merely wanting to beautify my own yard? As I sat on my couch, the weight of the HOA's demands pressed heavily on my mind, and I found myself replaying our conversation over and over again. Each time, my irritation grew, amplifying my resolve to fight back. I began to reflect on how important my garden truly was to me. It wasn't just a patch of land filled with flowers, it was a manifestation of my identity, a sanctuary where I could express myself freely. The idea that anyone could dictate how I should curate that space felt like an infringement on my rights as a homeowner. It fired up an unyielding spirit in me. I wasn't about to back down without a fight. Determined to push back against the HOA's overreach, I started to gather information about the association's regulations and bylaws. I spent countless hours researching online, poring over community documentation and dissecting every rule that seemed to target homeowners like me. With each new piece of knowledge, I felt more empowered, as if I were assembling armor for the battle ahead. I also reached out to neighbors who might share my frustrations. It turned out I wasn't alone. Several residents echoed my sentiments of discontent regarding the HOA's increasingly draconian measures. Conversation sparked plans for solidarity, a united front against what we deemed unwarranted control over our personal spaces. This collective resolve galvanized my determination further. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about reclaiming our rights as homeowners and fostering an environment that embraced individuality rather than stifling it. With a newfound resolve and a burning desire to understand my rights as a homeowner, I dove headfirst into researching the HOA's policies. My first step was to pull up the community's governing documents, which I quickly discovered were not as straightforward as I had hoped. The covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC and RS, read like a legal maze, filled with jargon that seemed designed to confuse rather than clarify. Nevertheless, I was determined to dissect them, line by line. Armed with my laptop, I spent late nights in my living room poring over each provision. I learned about various restrictions the HOA enforced regarding house colors, lawn maintenance, and even acceptable mailbox designs. It became evident that their aim was to maintain a certain aesthetic throughout the neighborhood. However, it also highlighted their tendency to favor conformity over self-expression. As more details unfolded, my disbelief grew. How could such arbitrary rules overshadow individual creativity? Realizing that just understanding the rules wasn't enough, I began investigating property rights in general. Online forums and legal resources provided a wealth of information about homeowners' rights when it comes to HOAs and local municipalities. In some states, I read about homeowners successfully challenging what they deemed unfair regulations through legal action or community movements. This inspired me further. Perhaps I wouldn't be alone in this fight. To bolster my research efforts, I reached out to neighbors who shared their experiences with HOA scrutiny. Conversations flowed naturally, revealing stories of others rebuffing similar control attempts over landscaping or home alterations. Many had never felt empowered enough to push back, they simply accepted the HOA's rulebook as law. But now we were all awakening to a shared understanding. It was time for change in Maplewood Estates. This collaborative spirit fueled my investigations. Together we started gathering evidence of our dissatisfaction and talking points for future discussions with HOA members. By joining forces with my neighbors and 2 local attorneys specializing in homeowner law, we began laying the groundwork for not just resistance but potential transformation of our community's governance. As I delved deeper into my research and prepared to challenge the HOA, I realized that rallying support from my neighbors was crucial. It wasn't enough for me to fight alone. I needed to build a coalition of like-minded residents who shared similar grievances against the association. So, I decided to host an informal gathering at my house, inviting anyone in the neighborhood who might be interested in discussing our collective frustrations. On a warm Saturday afternoon, we gathered on my patio, surrounded by the colorful blooms that had sparked this entire journey. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over our conversation, I felt a sense of camaraderie brewing. One by one, residents began sharing their experiences with the HOA, stories of fines for minor infractions, disputes over landscaping choices, and even tales of how they felt stifled in their own homes. Martha, a longtime resident with a penchant for gardening like mine, spoke passionately about her struggle with the HOA's demands regarding her flower beds. "It's like they want us to live in cookie-cutter houses with no personality," she exclaimed. Her words resonated deeply with others around the table. We exchanged ideas on how we could present our case to the HOA more effectively and brainstormed potential solutions that would encourage creativity rather than suppress it. As conversations flowed, our collective resolve solidified. We decided to form an unofficial neighborhood alliance aimed at advocating for homeowners' rights and pushing back against unreasonable restrictions. With Martha leading the charge on organizing future meetings and drafting proposals for change, we felt emboldened, a united front ready to challenge an authority we once thought unassailable. With each meeting, our momentum grew stronger as more neighbors joined us. We began drafting a petition outlining our grievances and proposed amendments to the HOA bylaws that would allow for greater individual expression within our community guidelines. What started as an isolated battle over my garden had blossomed into a movement aimed at reclaiming our neighborhood spirit and re-establishing harmony between homeowners and the HOA. As momentum built within our alliance, a bold idea began to germinate in my mind. What if we didn't just challenge the HOA, but became its leaders? The mere thought of buying the HOA initially seemed preposterous, yet the more I considered it, the more it made sense. We were already mobilizing our neighbors and addressing concerns about governance. Why not take direct control of the rules that governed us? After discussions with fellow residents, I broached the topic at one of our meetings. To my surprise, the response was one of intrigue rather than disbelief. We began mapping out what a purchase would entail and what financial considerations we needed to address. The prospect excited us. It felt like reclaiming power over our community. I took on the responsibility of conducting preliminary research into the financials involved in purchasing an HOA. My first step was to reach out to other HOAs to gauge their budgets and membership fees, seeking insight into typical operational costs and potential valuation. It quickly became clear that an effective HOA relies heavily on dues collected from homeowners, making it imperative for us to understand how many properties we would need to secure in order for this idea to be financially viable. Next, I reached out to my contacts within the neighborhood, those who had been involved in real estate, to discuss possible financing options, including loans or forming a cooperative. They were pivotal in helping me draft a feasible budget that accounted for not just acquisition costs but also ongoing expenses like maintenance and administrative fees. We also formed smaller subcommittees tasked with evaluating legal considerations, such as drafting new bylaws that reflected our community's desires. There was a palpable sense of excitement as we envisioned an HOA run by us, prioritizing individuality and fostering creativity while enforcing reasonable guidelines. By pooling resources and contributions from like-minded residents who believed in this vision, we started gathering funds for a down payment on this audacious collective dream. What had begun as a fight against restrictive regulations transformed into something unprecedented, an opportunity to redefine how we live together as neighbors. Our planning sessions became infused with optimism as we strategized not only how to buy the HOA but also how to reshape its very essence into one empowered by community voices rather than impeded by inflexible rules. After months of planning and preparing, the moment had finally arrived to initiate the formal process of purchasing the HOA. With the necessary funds pooled together, we began by scheduling a meeting with the current board members to express our interest in acquiring the association. It felt both exhilarating and daunting. We were about to confront the very entity that had enforced rules on us for so long. At the meeting, tensions ran high as I presented our proposal. Honestly, I anticipated resistance from the board, and I wasn't disappointed. Their immediate reaction ranged from skepticism to outright hostility. Mr. Thompson, now visibly defensive, argued that a purchase would complicate things and disrupt community stability. However, armed with research and a compelling vision for a more inclusive governance model, I countered each claim with statistics on how an engaged community could thrive under new leadership. Negotiations were tough. The board members remained adamant about their perceived value of the HOA, which they estimated far higher than our calculations supported. After several back-and-forth discussions and attempts to negotiate terms, we finally agreed upon a price that reflected a compromise, one we believed was reasonable for both parties involved. The next hurdle involved navigating legal complexities. We retained an attorney specializing in real estate and HOA law to ensure every step of the process adhered to local regulations. This phase required meticulous attention to detail as we drafted documents outlining the sales terms, proposed new bylaws that championed individuality, and prepared for necessary disclosures. Even with legal backing, we encountered pushback from some community members still loyal to the existing board. They expressed fears about potential changes and questioned whether our group could effectively manage the HOA's responsibilities. In response, we organized community forums to communicate our vision and reassure residents about our commitment to transparency and better governance. Ultimately, we secured not just approval for the purchase but also a sense of shared excitement in the air. As we signed the final paperwork, it marked not only a transition of ownership but a new chapter for Maplewood Estates, one where power would belong to the homeowners rather than a select few who enforced rigid conformity. We had rallied effectively against an establishment that had once stifled our creativity and today emerged triumphant, ready to reshape our community according to shared values and dreams. The moment the former board members learned that we had successfully purchased the HOA, a palpable wave of shock and dismay rippled through their ranks. I could almost hear the collective gasp during their first official meeting post-sale. Mr. Thompson, who had been so vocal during our negotiations, was particularly incensed. He had fought hard to maintain control over the community, and now he faced an authority he could no longer command. In the days that followed, board members attempted various strategies to retain their influence. They immediately called a special meeting, ostensibly to discuss the transition, but it quickly became clear they were trying to rally support from residents loyal to their old regime. They painted a picture of doom, warning homeowners that our new leadership would lead to chaos and a decline in property values. Their tactics were steeped in fearmongering, which only strengthened our resolve as we prepared to implement our vision. Some former board members even tried to undermine us by spreading misinformation about our intentions, claiming we would impose radical changes that would turn Maplewood Estates into a free-for-all. However, we had anticipated such reactions and took proactive measures. We organized a community forum where residents could ask questions and receive transparent answers directly from us. This open dialogue quickly dismantled the falsehoods being circulated. Despite their attempts to sow discord, the tide began to shift as many residents openly expressed support for our new leadership model. We emphasized our commitment to fostering individuality while maintaining reasonable guidelines, a stark contrast to the old board's rigid enforcement. As we took charge of the HOA's operations, the former board members found themselves in an uncomfortable position. They could no longer dictate terms from the sidelines but were now expected to cooperate under our fresh governance model. The transition wasn't without challenges. We experienced resistance from a few die-hard supporters of the previous regime, but overall, it became evident that change was not only possible but embraced by an ever-growing segment of the community eager for progress. With each passing day, we solidified our hold and further demonstrated that this new era was about collaboration rather than control. With the purchase of the HOA successfully completed, it was now time to implement tangible changes that would foster a more inclusive and vibrant community atmosphere. One of my first actions was to convene a meeting with our new board, composed of enthusiastic residents eager for change. Together, we drafted a plan that prioritized community input and individual expression, significantly revising the stringent rules that had previously governed Maplewood Estates. We began by re-evaluating the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC and RS, that had stifled creativity. Instead of rigid guidelines on landscaping that penalized homeowners for personalized designs, we introduced a new policy where residents could present their ideas for yard ornaments or unique plant choices for approval, with the aim of celebrating diversity in design rather than enforcing conformity. A key feature of this policy was ensuring decisions were made through resident votes in community forums, allowing everyone's voice to be heard. Moreover, we initiated regular community gatherings, informal potlucks and outdoor movie nights, designed not only for social interaction but also as platforms for discussing ongoing HOA matters. These events helped break down barriers among neighbors and encouraged open dialogue about what changes community members wanted to see, reinforcing a sense of ownership over their neighborhood. To further enhance inclusivity, we established subcommittees tasked with addressing various aspects of community life, landscaping, safety initiatives, and event planning. This approach enabled residents to participate actively in decisions that affected them directly while fostering collaboration within diverse groups. For example, one subcommittee worked to create guidelines for seasonal decorations that spurred creativity during holidays rather than imposing restrictions. As I walked around the neighborhood after these changes took effect, I noticed an immediate transformation, not just in yards adorned with bursts of color but in the energy among residents who felt empowered to express themselves freely. The air buzzed with excitement and pride. We were building a community characterized by individuality rather than fear, where neighbors celebrated each other's unique contributions instead of conforming to homogenized standards. With every positive interaction and creative expression, it became clear that the true essence of Maplewood Estates was finally being realized, a place where everyone truly belonged. The changes implemented in Maplewood Estates after the purchase of the HOA had a profound impact on community dynamics, significantly improving relationships among neighbors. The atmosphere shifted from one of tension and fear of reprimand to a vibrant sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. As residents began to engage more actively in subcommittees and community forums, they discovered common interests that transcended previous divisions. One of the most notable transformations was in the way neighbors interacted during our community events. Where there had once been whispers of discontent regarding rule enforcement, there were now laughter and conversation over meals shared at potlucks and outdoor movie nights. Neighbors who had only exchanged cursory greetings in passing now found themselves forging friendships based on shared hobbies, such as gardening, crafting, or organizing community service projects. It became heartening to hear stories about how individuals started collaborating on beautification projects, turning their yards into reflections of their unique styles while respecting the new guidelines. Moreover, residents felt empowered to voice their opinions without fear of backlash. The regular community forums served as a safe space for discussions about future initiatives and the general direction of Maplewood Estates. This newfound openness encouraged thoughtful conversations around sensitive topics, reducing misunderstandings and fostering a sense of collective responsibility. As tensions subsided, we saw a newfound enthusiasm for participation in HOA governance, attendance at meetings increased, and feedback became constructive rather than combative. People were eager to contribute ideas and solutions rather than just deflect criticism, highlighting a collective investment in making our neighborhood thrive. Ultimately, these improvements revitalized not only individual relationships but also the community's spirit. The sense of belonging was palpable. Residents were no longer merely passive participants within a regulated framework but active contributors to an evolving narrative about what it meant to call Maplewood Estates home. With each positive interaction reinforcing this new reality, we shaped a community narrative that celebrated unity amid diversity, a testament to the power of collaboration and shared ownership in creating a better living environment for all. Reflecting on this journey, I realize that the experience has taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, the importance of property rights, and the power of community. Initially, I felt overwhelmed by the confrontation with the HOA, unsure of how to navigate the bureaucratic hurdles that stood in my way. However, as I rallied support from neighbors and transformed our shared frustrations into a movement for change, I discovered the strength that comes from unity. This journey highlighted the significance of understanding one's rights as a homeowner. Many residents had accepted the HOA's overreach simply because they were unaware of their rights or fearful of repercussions for speaking out. Empowered by knowledge and collaboration, we learned that standing up against unjust rules can lead to transformative change. As we challenged the status quo, not only did we reclaim our right to express ourselves in our personal spaces, but we also redefined how governance should function within our community. The most profound lesson came from recognizing the importance of community engagement. By fostering a culture of inclusivity and open dialogue, we found common ground with our neighbors, paving the way for lasting friendships and collaboration. The sense of belonging that developed through shared initiatives helped heal previous rifts and built a resilient network of support among residents. As I look around Maplewood Estates today, at gardens bursting with color, children playing in yards filled with creativity, and neighbors eagerly participating in community events, I am reminded that change is possible when people come together with a common purpose. Our journey has shown me that true community is built on respect, collaboration, and collective ownership. It thrives when every voice is heard and valued. This experience not only redefined our neighborhood but also reinforced my belief in the power of resilience and unity in overcoming adversity. As I reflect on the journey my neighbors and I undertook, I am filled with hope for others facing similar challenges. The experience has taught me that standing up for one's rights is not just a personal battle, it can spark a wider movement that promotes community engagement and empowerment. If you find yourself feeling stifled by rigid regulations or an unyielding HOA, remember that you hold the power to create change. Start by educating yourself about your rights as a homeowner. Knowledge is a formidable tool in advocating for yourself and your neighbors. Engage in conversations with fellow residents to gauge their feelings about the situation. Many may share your frustrations but feel intimidated to voice them. Building a support network transforms isolated grievances into shared goals, amplifying your collective strength. Consider organizing informal gatherings where community members can freely express their concerns and brainstorm innovative solutions together. Be open to diverse ideas. Sometimes, the best changes arise from unexpected suggestions. Establishing subcommittees to tackle specific issues, like landscaping guidelines or community events, allows residents to take ownership of decisions that directly impact their lives. Approach discussions with empathy, understanding that others may have different perspectives shaped by past experiences. This openness helps foster a respectful dialogue, creating a collaborative atmosphere rather than one built on division and fear. Ultimately, don't shy away from challenging the status quo. As I discovered, even the most entrenched systems can be reformed when individuals unite with passion and purpose. The sense of accomplishment that comes from actively participating in shaping your community is unparalleled. Finally, believe in the potential for positive change. Together, you can create an environment where individuality is celebrated rather than suppressed, where every voice matters, and where the community thrives in all its vibrant diversity. Your journey may be daunting, but it can lead to a more equitable and enriching living space for everyone involved. Stand tall, rally your neighbors, and embrace the opportunity to innovate toward a brighter future.